In 1939, British composer Elisabeth Lutyens completed her first serial work, the Chamber Concerto for 9 instruments, Opus 8, No. 1. She'd later claimed that her earliest experiments with serial techniques were completed with almost no awareness of the Second Viennese school of composers. Lutyens actually felt a closer affinity to 17th century composer Henry Purcell, who was enjoying something of a renaissance in England in the 1930s. Speaking with Bernard Palmer in 1969, in an interview for the BBC, Lutyens said, "The thing which I think precipitated me towards what is now called serialism is the rediscovery, strange to say, in performance, of the Purcell fantasias, where you heard 4 equal parts, coupled with the feeling I should scream if I heard a cadence again." Purcell's fantasias are written in a polyphonic style reminiscent of the late Renaissance, and characterized by frequent, unprepared dissonances, as well as imitative passages in which motives are developed through transposition, inversion, and retrograde. According to Laurel Parsons, a music theorist who studies Lutyens' music, the fantasias are a likely influence for her distinctive serial technique, in which the row functions more often as a source of shorter motives than a melody that is treated as an unbroken whole. This is clearly reflected in the second movement of Lutyens' String Trio Opus 57, which she completed in 1964. At just 12 measures long, this piece consists almost exclusively of brief 4-note gestures that foreground interval class 1, which Lutyens voices predominantly as broken octaves. These gestures can be categorized into 4 types, which I'll call A through D, and each is defined by a characteristic rhythm, articulation, and interval content. The movement consists of 6 phrases that rotate systematically through these 4 gestures, combining them to create 2 distinct subphrases for each cycle. The first subphrase is initiated by gesture A, which alternates rapidly between 2 pitch classes and a 16th note rhythm. It's performed pizzicato in the first phrase, but arco in all subsequent phrases. The 2 pitch classes of gesture A are then integrated into the quintuplet and triplet rhythms that form gestures B and C, respectively. Gesture B is always represented by set class 0, 1, 2, 3, while gesture C alternates between 0, 1, 6, 7 and 0, 1, 3, 4 in every phrase except the 4th, which we'll hear in a moment. The second subphrase presents gesture D, which features 4 syncopated quarter notes performed sul tasto and is accompanied by 1 or more sustained pitches. In most cases, one of these pitches aligns with the following phrase and is transformed into the next gesture A. This phrase structure is presented against the backdrop of an independent metric grid that completes 4 cycles through the meters 3-2, 5-4, and 2-2, which comprise 6, 5, and 4 quarter notes respectively. None of the phrases are presented at identical metric positions, and only the 6th phrase aligns perfectly with a complete metric cycle. Because of this constantly shifting meter, the 4 gestures of each phrase are projected through a kaleidoscopic array of metric placements, thus introducing a great deal of variety to what might otherwise become a predictable rhythmic pattern. Lutyens uses 12-tone techniques to generate the pitch material of this movement, with 1 row form corresponding to each of the 6 phrases. The row itself consists of 2 RI11 related hexachords with set class 0, 1, 2, 3, 6, 7, meaning that the center of the row functions as an axis from which the pitch material unfolds symmetrically, with only the direction of the intervals inverted. Note that because of the inversional relationship of these hexachords, rows that are related by RI11 are isomorphic, or share the same pitch content. In most cases, gestures A through C draw on the first hexachord of the row, and gesture D draws on the second hexachord, which further strengthens the boundary between the 2 subphrases. By this criteria, the boundaries between phrases are comparatively weaker, with 1 or 2 pitch classes typically shared between their row forms. In addition to this hexachordal segmentation, we can also divide the row into 3 tetrachords with set class 0, 1, 2, 3, which are arranged as 2 interval class 1 dyads. One aspect of Lutyens' serial technique that makes this piece especially interesting is that she often rearranges the pitch material of these tetrachords, rather than presenting it in the order it appears in the row. While she always preserves the interval class 1 relationship of each dyad, the position of these dyads and the order of their constituent pitches are treated with a great deal of flexibility. The most liberal example of this is found in the fourth phrase, which uses the R6 or I5 row forms. Instead of presenting the pitch material of this row in the expected order, Lutyens shifts the second dyad, D, E flat, to the beginning of the row. This allows her to align the first note of this phrase with the last note of the prior phrase, performed by viola and cello on a unison D4. Unlike the other phrases in this movement, the fourth phrase entirely omits gesture A and compresses the majority of the remaining three gestures into just over a measure. The two dyads in the second tetrachord of the row appear in their expected order, but with their constituent pitch classes reversed. The third tetrachord is arranged so that the first dyad is rhythmically nested within a retrograde of the second dyad. While the fourth phrase is the most dramatic example of Lutyens' willingness to modify her serial materials, most phrases in this movement demonstrate some degree of pitch reordering. To me, what really stands out as I listen to this piece is the remarkable variation that Lutyens achieves from phrase to phrase, despite the self-imposed constraints of a limited set of musical gestures and a consistently subdued dynamic range. 12-tone techniques certainly enable this variety by providing Lutyens with a broad reservoir of pitch materials saturated by interval class 1, what is certainly the defining interval of the work. However, what truly distinguishes Lutyens' approach is the striking freedom with which she adapts these materials, aligning them with the sweeping gestural trajectories that animate the entire composition.